Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today the board will participate in two meetings, virtual workshop and a virtual special meeting. In this first meeting, three workshop topics will be discussed: reopening task force, fiscal year 21 budget, and internet access. Following this meeting, we will convene a special meeting. All meetings today will be conducted using Google Meet technology for board members and staff who are participating live. Viewers and listeners can access the meetings today by either watching on Comcast channel 235 or by using the YouTube link on our webpage at palmbeachschools.org. We also offer a listening-only option which the public can access by calling 561-357-5900 or toll-free at 1-866-930-7015. The meeting ID is 156-188-01124 hashtag. I now call the workshop to order. Mrs. Bass, will you please call the roll? Board members, please verbalize your responses.
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Chuck Shaw. Okay. District 3, Karen Brill.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Here.
Great, we have quorum. All 7 board members are present. Also joining us on our virtual dais is Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy, General Counsel Julie Enrico, Inspector General Lung Chu, and Board Clerk Carol Bass. Senior staff members will join us periodically as directed by the superintendent. This meeting is being transcribed by a closed captioner, so remember to speak at a reasonable pace. Now please direct your attention to the flag on the screen. Dr. Fenoy, as soon as that flag appears, will you lead us in the pledge? All others, please keep your microphones on mute while saying the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Fenoy. A quick review of our meeting protocol. I know board members, you've got this down, but we have other people joining us periodically. So remember, if you're not speaking, your microphone should be on mute. Please raise your hand to get my attention, and I will nod to acknowledge that I saw you want to speak. I'm certainly writing down your names in the order that I see you. Put your hands up, and I'll call on you as quickly as I get down that list. If you need to step away from the meeting for a moment, please turn off your camera. This will let me know that you've stepped away, although I know you can still hear what is happening in the meeting. Dr. Fenoy, when you want to take over the workshop, please.
Yes, sir. I do have a process question for Ms. Bass. It says recorded speakers heard before each workshop.
Yes, there are 12 speakers. Mr. Barbieri, do you want to direct Mr. Ramazar to that?
Yes, Mr. Ramazar, I understand you're going to be putting our speakers on. There's 12 of them, so would you start that process, please?
Hi, my name is Shannon Fox. I live in Jupiter, Florida, and both of my kids go to public school. They will be entering 3rd grade in the fall. I'm calling to speak on the reopening task force. I want to say that I really appreciate the efforts that the teachers made to make school happen this spring. However, in my experience, the online schooling this spring required young kids to be self-motivated enough to complete online learning with little oversight or feedback on a daily and regular basis. Online learning by way of computer programs, instead of having teachers teaching live lessons, left kids with little opportunity to meaningfully receive help when needed. The programs made it difficult for parents to determine when tasks were completed and created a burden for working parents to try to fill the void. I honestly don't believe that my children received much of any education during the spring semester, and I'm afraid that these deficits will deepen if they cannot go back to school in the fall. As the county moves back to work, it is impossible for working parents to work when our minor children do not have school and aftercare available. While my work has been very flexible, this spring it's unrealistic for parents to bring their children to work for another semester. As the restaurants and businesses in the county are opening and people are interacting with one another, and even camps are opening this summer, it makes little sense for kids to miss out on an education when there are so many opportunities for them to get elsewhere. We all want our children and their teachers to be safe. However, I also want my children to receive a meaningful education, and for what I've seen, online learning is not that. Perhaps for older students it is doable, but I don't believe it is doable for elementary school children. When we weigh the developmental, psychological, socioeconomic, and other detriments to staying home against the possibility of catching a disease, which by most accounts has little risk to children, I believe that access to real education should win out. If not all parents feel this way, I implore you to offer school for the many parents who truly want their kids to go to school or who truly need their kids to go to school for other reasons, such as work. Thank you very much for your time, and hope you'll consider this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Liz Herman. I reside in District 6, and I'm calling on the workshop agenda item number 2, titled Reopening Task Force Presentation. I am calling to strongly support and urge you to support option number 1 for full-time in-school complete reopening. We're coming in from a perspective of 2 full-time working parents with 2 elementary-aged young children. While we appreciate all the hard work that the teachers in our school did in transitioning to distance learning in March, in reality, this type of distance learning was completely not independent, with both of our kids requiring constant assistance and attention, precluding full-time working from home for both of us. Also, another fact of reality is that, for better or worse, everything else has pretty much opened up now. The economy has opened up, and the school board and the schools cannot operate in a vacuum and are not an island unto themselves, unfortunately. Most employers and every business is open and has recalled the workers back into the workplace. And we need the schools to match that and reopen accordingly. I also want to voice my strong opposition to any other options that are discussed for any other alternatives, such as staggered start and alternating schedules. My boss and my clients will not let me work on a Tuesday and Thursday if I come in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. These options are simply unworkable for full-time working parents. So I strongly urge you to vote to reopen, to support option 1 and reopen the schools, allowing at least for grades K through 5 and working in some flexibility to allow parents to make individual choices for any of their own individual circumstances. Thank you very much for your support and accepting these public comments.
My name is Mary Ellen Pensker. I am a parent of 2 ESC students, a former teacher of 16 years, and currently a mental health practitioner. I am very concerned about the new CDC guidelines of requiring students to wear masks or face coverings for prolonged hours while at school due to health reasons. The wearing of masks should be optional, not required, because wearing a face mask for hours deprives the wearer of oxygen, puts the body in constant stress mode, and therefore lowers an individual's immunity. Dr. Russell Blaylock, a nationally recognized board-certified neurosurgeon, warns that not only do face masks fail to protect the healthy from getting sick, but they also create serious health risks to the wearer. The bottom line is, if you are not sick, you should not wear a face mask. Another deleterious effect of long-term mask wearing from Blaylock is the exhaled viruses will not be able to escape and will concentrate in the nasal passages, enter the olfactory nerves, and travel into the brain. Regarding specific support for the use of face masks, Dr. Blaylock's recent examination of the literature, including 17 studies analyzed, concluded that none of the studies established a conclusive relationship between mask respirator use and protection against influenza infection. Furthermore, Blaylock notes the following dangers from prolonged mask wearing include headache to increased airway resistance, carbon dioxide accumulation to hypoxia, all the way to serious life-threatening complications. And universal masking in hospitals in the COVID-19 era, published May 21st, 2020, in the New England Journal of Medicine, noted that wearing a mask was outside of healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Further, the chance of catching COVID-19 from a passing interaction in a public space is therefore minimal. In many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic. Currently, the World Health Organization says, from the data we have, it still seems to be rare that an asymptomatic person actually transmits onward to a secondary individual. Dr. Maria van Kerhove, head of WHR's Emerging Diseases and Zoonosis Unit, said at a briefing from the United Nations Agency, Geneva's headquarters, quote, "It's very rare." In conclusion, face coverings should be optional because of the deleterious health effects that they can have. They also affect our students socially. And in the unstable times of today, school needs to be a safe haven where all students with differences feel comfortable to come to school. And they should be able to eat in the cafeteria and have nutritious school meals instead of prepackaged foods. They should also be able to intermix with a variety of teachers and other students for socialization. And students need to be able to navigate the building and not be isolated to cubicles.
Hi, my name is Robin Mishkin. I'm the mother of 3 small children, who one is going into 6th grade and 2 going into 4th in Palm Beach County. For the past couple months, they've been virtual school. I'm urging everyone to please consider having the children back in school, at least K through 8, so elementary school and middle school full time. Being a working parent in a dual income household, having the children home while working has been extremely difficult and financially burdensome. We really need the kids in school, number one, as their education clearly seemed to suffer while at home, and 2, from a financial perspective of the parents. While I understand that it's a burden on everyone, I'm really urging, and I know that the county can take the safety measures to get the kids back in the classroom, to get the education levels back up and create a safe environment for everyone. Again, I'm really urging everyone to really take into consideration having the children back in school full time. Thank you.
Hello, this is Carly Workman. I live in West Boynton. My son attends a public elementary school, and I work at a charter high school for all ESE students. I have some comments regarding the mandate of wearing a mask while in school. My comment is essentially that I do not believe that this would be a good practice. I think that it might be advisable to have students have the masks and bring them to school, And I think that it might be possible for students to wear the mask when social distancing isn't possible, like in the hallways during dismissal and drop-off, and maybe on their way to specials if you do decide to have students change in class to go to specials. I would be in favor of students eating lunch in the classroom rather than in the cafeteria, but I guess walking to the cafeteria if they will be eating in that area. My issue with students wearing masks at all times is that I think they're a huge distraction. I also think that with my particular child, anxiety in class becomes an issue, and it becomes difficult for him to speak and participate. He also has a problem with stuttering occasionally, and so I think it would be very difficult to further muffle his voice. My personal experience has been that when a person wears a mask, especially if it's the teacher, it's very difficult to hear what they're saying. And so I think that that would be a huge detriment to the students' learning. I am not a person that believes that COVID-19 is fake or doesn't exist or not dangerous at all. I am a person that believes that we do need to open carefully. And so, split sessions, either Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday with, online components is what I would recommend. And so if those things are done and the numbers are kept down, I think that while the students are kept in their classroom pod, what have you, and are in a class size that is much reduced, would not be necessary to wear the mask. I think it would be more important to have them spaced out appropriately, facing the front rather than facing each other, like is often common practice in elementary school in groups, so that they are not breathing and speaking and coughing on each other. And that would be a better practice than having students wear masks. And I definitely think that that should be looked into over wearing masks and considering that safe. I also think that when people wear masks, they think that they are safe, and it actually makes them, especially children, touch their face more often, and that can be a huge problem as well. So I hope that you take that into account, and I hope that you come up with a good solution, and I'm looking forward to having a successful school year. Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Erin Sonnenberg, and I have 3 children in the Palm Beach County school system. I'm calling about the agenda for wearing masks in school for the start of the 2020 year. I am begging you not to have children wear masks in school. The research shows that it can actually be dangerous for children to constantly wear a mask, to breathe in their own carbon dioxide, and that can actually decrease their oxygen levels. That decreases their brain function and their brain power for learning and taking tests, and it also can cause headaches and dizziness. Please let children be children, and please do not make it mandatory for students to wear masks in the Palm Beach County school system. Thank you so much for your consideration. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Hi, my name is Pamela Mermelstein. I live at 5916 Summer Lake Lane in Boynton Beach. I do not want my children wearing masks during all day long in school. It is not reasonable, and it's very difficult for them, and I don't feel that it's healthy. I feel that they will be breathing in a lot of germs just by wearing masks. Thank you. Bye.
Good morning. My name is Stanley Mermelstein. I'm a resident of Palm Beach County, and I do not believe that it is good for children to wear masks while in school. Thank you.
Yes, hi. My name is Amy Romano. My son will be attending kindergarten in August, and this is regarding the children wearing masks for next year. I am opposed to masks for the children. I'm okay with it for the teachers. just not the kindergarteners. I think that they'll definitely need to see their teachers' mouth movements and lips as they're speaking and learning. And I think that kindergarten absolutely should definitely not be wearing, the children being wearing masks. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Reich. I have an upcoming kindergartner and an upcoming second grader in the Palm Beach County School District. I am calling in reference to the wearing of masks for the upcoming school year. I am extremely against wearing masks for my young elementary age children. Although my father is immunocompromised, I still don't want my children to wear a mask in school, as I think that it is very distracting for them. They're unable to concentrate on what they would have to do. They can't breathe properly. I myself, as an adult, cannot wear it for more than a few minutes, and I would not expect my children to be in a learning environment and properly get the education that I'm sending them to school to receive while wearing a mask. I am very much against it, as I am opposed to a lot of other protocol for elementary students that might be occurring because of the COVID. I appreciate you listening to my comments, and I really strongly believe that we should allow the children as much attention and much ability to be children as they were before. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacy Wilhite. I'm a parent of a student entering 8th grade at Woodlands Middle School. He's been in the school district since kindergarten. I'm calling to oppose that the students will be required to wear masks in the fall. If he is required to wear a mask in the fall to 8th grade at Woodlands, then I will not be sending him to school. I will be instead homeschooling him. And further, I know many other parents who feel the same way. So if you have any questions, you can reach me at 561-699-0026. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Hello, my name is Brittany Best. My daughter is an incoming first grader in Boynton Beach, and I'm calling in regards to children being mandated to wear masks in the upcoming school year. I personally believe as long as it is safe for children to go back to school, that masks should not be required for children, especially the younger kids. It takes away from a lot, I think, that they are accustomed to, and so much was taken away from them so quickly because of the virus. And like I previously said, as long as it is safe to do so, to go back to school, I don't want my child wearing a mask for 6 hours. I fear that she would be afraid looking at her friends wearing a mask for 6 hours. And you know what, there comes a lot of cons with the children wearing that as well. We want school to be a warm environment for them, somewhere where they feel comfortable. And I don't want my daughter going back to school after such a scary experience of being pulled away from school so quickly, being scared. So I am for my child going back to school, again, as long as it is safe to do so, going back to school as normal, without having to go back wearing a mask and then being scared of seeing her friends and her peers and her teacher wearing masks for 6 hours. So I really hope that you take in to consideration what the parents are saying and how we want this to be a positive experience for our children. And, you know, just because of everything that has gone on, a lot has suffered. They have suffered. Their learning has suffered. Socialization has suffered. We want this to be as positive as experience for them as it previously was. So again, we appreciate everything, and hopefully you will take this into consideration. But I am 100% against having our children, especially so young, wear masks full day. Thank you. We're looking forward to the next school year starting. Bye-bye.
Mrs. Bass, the last speaker didn't record her message. She actually sent it in writing. Would you please read that into the record?
Yes. This is a statement to the school board from Anna Billet, B-I-L-L-E-T, mother of 7 kids, ages 2 through 16 from Boynton Beach. I am writing to raise awareness of the potential negative outcomes of our children wearing masks for a length of the entire school day. A study was done in 2008 where researchers examined the blood oxygen levels of 53 surgeons before and after surgery. The researchers found that by the end of the surgery, the masks had reduced blood oxygen levels significantly. The longer the use of the mask, the greater the fall in blood oxygen levels. COVID-19 is a respiratory disease. Preventing the flow of oxygen, blocking our respiratory system, and putting up a barrier to fresh air, which will affect our breathing and limit our access to fresh air, will not help our children maintain optimal health. And maintaining optimal health is exactly what we need to fight against this disease. When we have something blocking our ability to breathe and exhale, we end up breathing back in the CO2 our body desperately wants to emit, making us more at risk for respiratory acidosis, which is a condition that occurs when the lungs have too much acidic matter and can't remove enough of the carbon dioxide produced by the body. When someone is hyperventilating, the first course of action is to give him or her a paper bag to breathe into. That person needs to breathe back in their CO2 because the extra acid going back into the lungs neutralizes the body and calms him or her down. But when we aren't hyperventilating and our body is already at neutral, to maintain optimal health, we need to minimize our intake of CO2 to prevent the buildup of acidic matter in our body. Wearing masks does the opposite. Additionally, unless a kid is wearing a specific type of fitted mask, the mask is highly ineffective towards preventing the transmission of viruses. Masks, when worn for a long period of time, are effective at inducing hypoxia, hypercapnia, headaches, and the inability to concentrate, which is the exact opposite state which kids should be at in school. Masks prohibit kids from being fully engaged in learning. Masks prevent kids from concentrating on their lessons. Masks deter kids from asking questions. Masks make it difficult for kids to completely understand what a teacher is saying whose voice is muffled. Lastly, and most importantly, we know how important it is for kids to stop touching their mouths and noses. The last thing we should do is give our kids the opportunity to fiddle with something all day that is touching their mouth and nose. I have 7 kids, and I have seen that whether it's my high schooler or preschooler, each one ends up constantly adjusting the mask when having to wear it for a long period of time, and they end up inadvertently touching things after adjusting it without washing their hands in between. Instead, having hand sanitizer on desks and establishing diligent hand washing protocol, which will be much more effective at combating COVID-19 and will not have the negative outcomes of all-day mask wearing. I feel very strongly that the negative consequences of children wearing masks greatly outweighs any good that may come from wearing them in a school setting. Thank you for reading my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Mr. Superintendent, if you would like to start the reopening task force presentation.
Yes, let me read a statement and then we will begin. On April 4th, 2018, with my family by my side, some of which grew up in the Jim Crow South, I stood before a judge and this board proudly accepting the oath of office to become the superintendent of Palm Beach County. I swore well and faithfully to perform the duties of superintendent. I fully understand the enormity, responsibilities, and duties of those important words. The ceremonial swearing in occurred about 3 weeks after this board voted in favor of naming me the 26th superintendent of the school district of Palm Beach County. My sworn promise that day and today is the same. I vowed to ensure that all students, especially those students in our lowest performing subgroups who are Black students, have the best educational opportunities available to them in Palm Beach County. Ladies and gentlemen, even before COVID-19 disrupted our lifestyle, education as we knew it was changing, and the pandemic and recent developments involving racial tension have accelerated that evolution. Our launch of the new school year is not simply picking up where we left off, it's about returning and recovering. As you learned at the last board workshop, I have directed strategic back-to-school initiatives. Our reopening task force is currently evaluating input from tens of thousands of parents who continue to respond to the district's generated survey. That input will help guide the decisions that will ultimately be made at the district level. You'll hear much more about that work in a moment. The Health Advisory Committee that I appointed consists of medical experts who will ensure that our top priority remains health, safety, and well-being of all of our students and staff. While we navigate the challenges and barriers presented by a global pandemic and plan the school year ahead, we were also presented with a potentially devastating financial shortfall. As we brace to learn the totality of the negative financial impact on our school district caused by COVID-19, we also realize that we will incur new and previously unexpected expenses. The district must take every necessary step to ensure that the best interests and the wellness of our students is our first priority and central to all decisions. As a board, you have put me in charge of maintaining excellence in education despite any hardships this district may face. As the CEO of a $3.5 billion organization, I am very cognizant that this organization has a business function, and very difficult business decisions have to be made. We must streamline our practices, conserve where we can, and strategically realign from the top, again, with the ultimate goal of doing what is in the best interest of our students. During this difficult time, the district office must reassess priorities and best practices to ensure fewer resources. We must realign, but we must not reduce quality. For that reason, I have instructed my top administrators to cut their budgets in their departments with the further instruction that school staffing remains untouched. Chief Financial Officer Mike Burke will go into much more detail during his presentation. It's important to remember that the unexpected events such as Stoneman Douglas, COVID-19, and now the national recognition of Black men and women being killed underscore the critical need for comprehensive wellness and equity plans. It is likely the district will need to make additional well-planned realignments and reductions throughout this organization. Again, my recommendations and the reasoning behind them are based on the best interests of all of our stakeholders, especially the children during this difficult time. During my evaluation, which took place last September, the board rated me highly effective. You challenged me to be even more intentional, were your words, to be creative, to publicly assert my influence and leadership across the district. You encouraged me to make my mark. I thank you for that encouragement. Additionally, you will recall that you made me sign a contract, and I am delegated all power and duties necessary to fulfill the efficient management and administration of the district to the full extent permitted by law, including hiring, firing, organizing, reorganizing, assigning, and reassigning administrative staff of the district as deemed necessary to effectively positive change for students. Since taking the oath of superintendent 2 years ago, the members of this board have served as seven separate mentors. I appreciate that. I look forward to our continued collaboration as we navigate these awfully trying times. Effective positive change amid this new reality takes a unified effort. I thank you at this time. For our first workshop today, we will have a good friend of ours, a longtime district administrator, Mr. Larry Clausen, who will now begin conversation with the board about our reopening task force presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Barbieri, school board members, Superintendent Fenoy. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you the work the reopening task force has done to this point as we reimagine what schools will look like for the FY21 school year. First, I would like to give credit to all those who have provided support and input to our efforts so far. The strategy support group, the reopening task force subgroups, the division project managers, research evaluation, our legal department, and communications. In less than 3 weeks, a lot of work has been done. However, the heaviest lift is in front of us. At this time, I will share with you our work to this point. And as we begin this very challenging and hopefully once in a lifetime work, we want to keep our students as our top priority. So to start this presentation, I would like to share with you a quote from one of our recent graduates. If I knew on March 13th, when we walked out of school, that I was concluding the high school chapter of my life, I would have looked back one more time. That was Riley Schwartz from Boynton Beach High School. The goal of the reopening task force is to present considerations, implications, and possibilities of reopening options for Palm Beach County schools for the FY21 school year. The reopening options must take into account an emphasis on safety and security of all students and staff, prioritizing an equitable environment for all students, and ensuring high quality instruction, and have the adaptability for sudden closures. From January to March, the district responded to the COVID-19 outbreak. The school district of Palm Beach County moved quickly to put crisis response plans into place for distance learning, for technology distribution, and for school feeding sites. Cross-functional work groups were created to address the immediate needs of our students and including the closeout of the FY20 school year. Across the state of Florida, as we monitored the outbreak, in mid-March, all schools were closed due to COVID-19. And across our country, 48 states, 4 U.S. territories, and the District of Columbia ordered or recommend school building closures for the rest of the academic year, affecting 50.8 million public school students. And across our world, as of April 2nd, students were out of schools in 185 countries. That's roughly 9 out of 10 school children worldwide. As a district, we adapted as one body, mobilizing our entire workforce towards designing and implementing distance learning in response to COVID-19. While we continue to fight COVID-19 globally, we are reimagining what is possible with an even greater lens for opportunity that increase the ability to adapt and continue to provide high quality instruction with an equity lens to serve all of our students. From April through June, we've been reimagining, reorganizing, strategizing, planning, and preparing for the opening of the school year. Our efforts must now focus on developing reopening options that take into consideration best practices and recommendations from various stakeholders. The creation of the reopening task force has been done, as well as the superintendent's advisory committee. Also, we will have planned focus groups and town halls with key stakeholders, including but not limited to parents, teachers, and students. During this time from April to June, some key dates. The last day of the academic school year for FY20 was May 29th. For those of us that have been working on the task force, that seems like a long, long time ago, but it really is not. On June 3rd, the board, at the last board meeting, the superintendent briefly gave you some introductions to our reopening strategies. On June 5th, our parent survey was launched and will run through June 17th. Today, June 10th, we are giving you our initial reopening plans and timeline. And tomorrow at the Principals Town Hall, we will be sharing the same information with all the principals. This next document is the document for the governance structure for the reopening task force. At the top, obviously, you see our students, parents, and community in Palm Beach County. Directly under them, you have the school board, and the superintendent and executive cabinet. And then you see the reopening task force. The reopening task force originally started as work group 16. Dr. Fenoy then asked us to begin the reopening task force and gave us some key members that he wanted to add to that reopening task force and look at possible optionings for what school would look like as we open school in August. The options that we will be presented to the superintendent and executive cabinet will apply an equity lens and be informed by subject matter experts from all the divisions in the district. Options for reopening schools proposed by the reopening task force will reflect a variety of stakeholders' input, including but not limited to school-based staff. And you'll see on the left side of the chart, you'll see the Health Advisory Committee, the Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee, and all the groups that will be meeting with the superintendent and his staff for the town halls. On the right of the chart, you will see the Strategy Support Team. That team is tasked by the superintendent to identify resources to support the reopening task force in the district at large. They will coordinate large strategies for planning and execution of phases for the reopening and efforts as needed, and will provide support to the project managers to help them integrate efforts from across all subgroups. And right below the reopening task force, you'll see the 4 major divisions in our district: human resources, operations, academics, and finance and IT. And each of those areas have a project manager or a subject matter expert that is helping us combine all this information as what we can possibly do as we move forward and what possibly we may not be able to do as we move forward. So all these groups are working together as we continue to put our best thinking forward as we try to bring solutions or considerations to the executive cabinet, the superintendent, and obviously the board for what school may look like in August. Now, the next slide is from our academic team, and it looks at the 3 options that we've been studying. And you can see to the left of the chart is the full-time, everyone is back in school model, where students and teachers are both back in school. And what we need to make sure we continue if we do go back to school, obviously, is following CDC guidelines as best as possible. But however, continuing with flipped instruction and Google Classrooms and recorded content so that in case there is a major outbreak again, we will be able to go back to distance learning and be a little bit more prepared than we were when we went in the 4th quarter of this school year. Even though all students, the option for all students to return to school may be the option that is selected, some students may choose to stay at home due to health concerns or high risk areas. So we have to be able to prepare to educate those students as well. In the second column, which is the hybrid or blended model, that is where we have, we'll say Group A students are in class every day with teachers, and Group B students are at home learning online. And then they may go Monday, Thursday, and then Tuesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, whatever the other days are, then they would flip and Team B would go live with the teacher and Team A would be learning virtual. One thing about this particular model, if we do decide to go this way, it will help us to meet some of the CDC guidelines. And then on the day that there's no students in school at all, gives us an opportunity to do a deep sanitation of all of our schools, a deep cleaning, as well as possibly parent conferences, IEP meetings, PLC meetings, things of that nature. And then on the left side of the chart, you'll see the distance learning model, which is what we finished out the school year, where teachers will continue to use Google Classrooms and Google Meets daily. However, we do know that we need to focus on improving the quality of that instruction if that is the model that we have to go to due to a major outbreak as we move forward. No matter which model we choose, the district scope and sequence and high quality instruction must be followed and must be adhered to.
Mr. Quatta?
Yes.
Ms. Brill has a question. Ms. Brill?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm looking at slide number 7, just back a bit, sorry. But my question was regarding the focus groups and the town halls and surveys. Are you including in that, I know you have union reps, but are we going to have the teachers in a focus group? I know the teachers sent out their own survey, the CTA, but that doesn't, we have teachers that aren't part of them, and they are the one group that has the most face-to-face contact with the students. So I really think that we need to have them involved in this process.
Yes, Dr. Fournier, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So great point, Ms. Brill. So we are going to be launching an all staff survey next week. On our current back to school task force, we have the list of all of the teachers, both unionized and unionized, that are part of those task force. So that currently exists. So we could share those rosters with you if you like. I think we shared them with the unions already. And so, and then I think when we do the next iteration will be regional offices will be holding town hall meetings in which teachers could also participate there.
And also later on in the presentation, you will see our subgroups, and I will share with you how teachers were involved in some of that decision making and planning that was done at the school level. Okay, as we continue with the presentation and we look at the timeline, we're in June. CDC recommendations and best practices will continue to inform our planning as we ensure planning for safe return to school. A quick look at a timeline. On the next board workshop on July 1st. Results from our surveys will be shared. The third board workshop on July 8th, the reopening task force will be presenting detailed reopening options. And on July 15th, our final recommendations that will be taken to executive cabinet and to the superintendent will be brought to the board meeting on July 15th. And from July 15th on, we will be focusing on the execution of our reopening plan. Also in that box, you'll just see some key dates of our employees as they return to work from summer vacation. So we want to keep that in mind as we continue to put our plans forward and make sure that we're meeting those deadlines and when people are returning to work. Next slide, please. Okay, our approach to planning is robust and inclusive. We are convening and organizing multiple stakeholders to gather input that informs our plans. And again, on the left, kind of going back over what was on the left side of the org chart, the students, parents, and community members, as well as elected officials, business leader, local organizations, and union reps, health advisory committee, principals, budget committee. Those will all be meeting directly with the superintendent or with the superintendent's staff. In the middle, the data-driven input will be what the reopening task force will be looking at. We'll be looking at data from the parents. We'll be looking at data from the district staff, teachers survey when it comes in, comments that were made at the board meetings, the latest CDC and other entity guidelines. We have Dr. Carlene Millen, who's working very closely with us to make sure that we have a good equity lens as we can prepare all of our options. And of course, our legal team is providing guidance for us as we move through the process. To the right of it is where our subgroups, which we have been meeting with pretty regularly. The elementary school, middle, and high school subgroups are made up of, there's 2 instructional superintendents on each group, and there's 13 principals for all 3 groups totally, as well as support staff from within the district, Kevin McCormick from ESE, Harvey from ELL, PJ from FTE. And so we have resources for them as we move forward. And what I will tell you is when these subgroups went back to their schools to prepare their plan that they provided to us, they spoke to their teachers as well as their teacher leaders as well as their assistant principals. Then you also see the 4 divisions in their subgroups as well. I understand we have some comments.
Yes, sir, Mr. Clausen. Mrs. Andrews and then Ms. McQuinn.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen, and thank you for this hard work that you're doing. The organized town hall meetings where you're going to have students, parents, and Palm Beach County community. How do you envision who are the people that will be selected and how will they know how to be a part of these town halls? Let me know how that works, visualize how that's working so that we can get the voice of the people that need to have a voice.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So the regionals and I just met about it yesterday. And so I basically gave them the task that they have to organize it. Prior to now, we've had very specific emails to the board office with people that said they wanted to participate. So by region, we will get those to those regionals. They will be invited first. I would ask that all board members participate in these town halls. So the regional offices will be reaching out to you. And then I'm kind of leaving it up to them to organize, considering that some of their regions are very diverse. And so there might be multiple town halls within a region that might need to occur. And so I'm tasking the regional officers. We're going to help them with sort of a template, but I'm asking, I should have said this before, I'm asking the board to work with the regional office to make sure all the appropriate people are in place.
Ms. McQuinn. Microphone, Ms. McQuinn.
Okay, sorry, just got to think of that. Shouldn't have left it. I got too busy making myself notes. Yeah, this is a little more specific question, but it goes back to 2 of my colleagues before. In looking at, here's the question. Are we not going to send a survey to all of our teachers?
Yes, that survey is going out next week.
Next week.
Okay, see, I didn't see when it says district staff, that I'm just saying this because I had some teacher calls yesterday, and believe it or not, it just never occurred to me. They're worried about losing their jobs. So
I don't even know where that came from. But, and of course, I didn't assure them of anything, but I told them how essential they were. So I'm going to just stop and let Dr. Tenoy, I can see him coming in.
Yes, ma'am, but let's be clear. Our first iteration of tackling the budget, we are not touching the schools. That's the whole goal. The second part of that question, the survey that will go out will be for all district staff, including teachers, guidance counselors, food service workers, custodians, bus drivers, central office staff, et cetera. And so we want to make sure we get as much feedback as we can from everyone. I would probably argue in some instances, we'll probably need to do something different than an email survey in some of our like transportation and some of those areas as well, but we'll work through those.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. And I'm going to comment first on what you said, Dr. Fenoy. You might need to also in food service. I know from my dealings with some of the employees, a lot of them don't use computers. So you might have to consider also for them a paper survey. I just had a question about the organized town halls. The Health Advisory Committee, Mr. Clausen, are you talking about, do we have our own, or are you talking about the formal school health advisory committee that exists?
Ms. Brill, this is the superintendent's health advisory committee in relation to opening schools.
Okay, so if I may just follow up and suggest to you, there is something called the School Health Advisory Committee, which you might want to invite some representatives from there, possibly to join you. I don't know who you have on yours. You may have a lot of the same people, the nurses, ESD, but you might want to look into it because there is an entity. I serve as our representative on it.
Okay.
But there is
what I'll do for the board, probably before this meeting is over, I'll have the team send you the list of all of those who agreed to participate in the Health Advisory Task Force, the Superintendent's Health Advisory Task Force. We have it listed. As a matter of fact, Dr. Sheffield or Jay Bogus, if you could get that to the board, then they can have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Just a timeline to kind of wrap up our presentation. June, we're right in the thick of things right now. Obviously, our survey did go out on the 5th. It will run through the 17th. Our second milestone is we are presenting an overview to you today at the workshop. On July 1st, we will be sharing input from the surveys back with everyone. And on July 8th, our fourth milestone, again, we will be presenting options for the next school year, what that possibly could look like as we move through this executive cabinet, the superintendent, and through you as well. And then July 15th, as I said earlier, that's when final decisions need to be made so we can start executing the plan. We're planning for a safe return to schools, and welcoming our students back is our #1 priority. And in closing, just like we did as we started this presentation, I would like to share a quote from one of our graduating seniors. You cannot let anyone tell you that you can't do something that you are striving for. Like the late Kobe Bryant once said, the moment you give up is the moment you let someone else win. So don't let people's words and hatred get to you. Use their disapproval and doubt to fuel your drive towards triumph. You won't have time to entertain your fans because you will be focused on the betterment of yourself and your life. And that was from Jemanuel Theus from Royal Palm Beach High School. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present. I will tell you that this is some very, very important work, and I'm very happy to be part of it. And back partially on the academic side of things as we get ready to open schools. Yes.
Okay. I think that Mr. Barbieri is telling me to go ahead. By the way, I figured out why I can't. When I move over to that other screen, I lose that little bottom bar. Okay. Just wanted to say to Mr. Clausen, I think this may be the first time you've done a full official presentation. So congratulations, you did a great job. Happy to see you back on the academic side.
Well, I felt like I was preparing for my graduation speech.
Let me say this as well. Larry's been fantastic. But when I tell you there's an amazing team behind him organizing this stuff, Edward Michelle, Joanna, Kathy V, Crystal Washington, Michelle. I want to thank Valerie Haynes for really work group 16 and all of those principals and leaders that were on that transitioned it over to this. I've seen a lot of collaborative team efforts, but this is one for the books. I'll tell you that. Larry is a very thankful person for the people around him.
I will tell you that I've learned so much in 3 weeks. When you've been doing it for a long time, I was not someone that was a strong program management kind of person. A lot about program management and how you move a project through very quickly. And it's been a learning experience, and I'm very thankful for the people that I work with.
Thank you. Dr. Robertson, then Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. Sorry about that delay. I was having trouble finding my unmute button. So thank you for this presentation. It seems like we're about to move on, and I had some concerns, actually. So the first thing is, since we were talking about these town halls, and maybe I wasn't focused enough, but these are envisioned to be in-person town halls?
Not at first. I think we're going to start with our normal mode first, but we're open to any recommendations beyond this type of presentation first.
Okay, that's good, because I know that there are a lot of people who would like to add their 2 cents, but are not willing to risk this big unknown called COVID-19 in order to do so. What specific attempts are we making to reach the parents who do not have email, that we did not reach in the whole email survey that took place right after we switched to distance learning? Have we figured that out, how to reach them?
I don't know if it's perfect because we haven't tested it yet, but I will say this. Over the last month, I've reached out to every mayor and city manager, people to basically say any content that we create, any information that the district needs to get out, would they be willing to push that out through all of their resources to get to those entities? I would, but I would also say that we're not going to catch it all. So I think that's when we would need feedback from the board, especially what Ms. Andrews, like she brought up. I think you're going to have to, I would ask that you would help us think about the areas to reach that we haven't thought about. And so we would be willing to do it. So right now, from my seat, I've contacted all the municipalities, the county, and said, anything that we need to push out, would you be willing to help us? The answer was across the board, yes. And I think the team will work through those other pieces, but we'll absolutely open any feedback about what else we can do.
Okay, so I think we need to make sure that we receive the information from the numerous community surveys that have taken place already. It's not going to be completely in alignment, but there'll be some information in there that we can take back, right? So, for example, the Northwest Southwest Neighborhood Association in Delray surveyed their own community members, but they were solving the problem as they went. So if they said that they didn't have a laptop or a device, they worked to get them the device. But that might be some information that will be helpful. In addition, I was part of putting together a survey that should be asked by the Bridges sites as well as Healthier Neighbors on how we can do a better job of working with parents. And so again, it's not exactly in alignment, but there'll be information in there that will help to inform how we reopen in whatever scenario we're able to reopen. Now I want to go back to these blended learning.
Dr. Robinson, can I respond to that real quick, please?
Yes, please.
I know Kathy Villavicencio was on the call. Kathy, could you reach out to all the board members and to get, if they know of these type of groups that we might be able to get survey data from, then she can get that to the task force. And so I will assign that to Kathy V. If you can just type in the chat box that you heard me, and then just contact. So all board members, please be on the alert that you're going to get a communication with Kathy V to get that information Dr. Robinson just spoke to, if it's applicable in your context.
Okay, that's fantastic. Kathy V is fantastic. So I know she'll get it done. So the blended learning instructional options. So like I know that these are just proposals. These are not locked in stone the options, but let me just say, so like none of us wants to be here, right? All of us want to go back, like flip the switch and go back to whatever normal used to be, because it's like all nice and comfortable. We know what it is. And we're entering into this space and we don't know what it is. Well, we've been in a space and we don't know what it is for a long time. And so we're talking about reopening school in a space that we don't understand. And so while I really, truly appreciate the comments of the parents that left messages about this and sharing their concern, one of them said, as long as it's safe to go back to school, they don't think that the students need to wear masks, if I recall correctly. So, but this is the thing. So it's risk reduction, right? So like, I don't know when it will be safe, right? Like when there will be like zero chance of transmission of this virus. I don't know. That's not going to happen anytime in the near term. And all parents and students will have completely gone stir crazy if we wait for safe, right? So it seems to me that we're going to have these options as outlined, and depending on what the science is looking like is how we're going to choose. I would personally place a bet that we're going to be in the hybrid model. I also agree with the parents that say we have to reopen schools. The community needs us to reopen so that students can go back to school so that they're supervised as well as learning, right? But just in terms of the conditions that will need to be in place when children come back together in school, with all the spacing and yada, 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 I think we're gonna have to do the hybrid. The question is, where are the children gonna be in the alternate times when they're not in the schoolhouse? And I think it is our responsibility to work with and engage community partners to make sure that we have a whole bunch of different options so children can sign up. So if I'm in class on Monday and Wednesday, on Tuesday and Thursday, and maybe Friday, I'm at the Boys and Girls Club, right? But so for me, this is not just a health issue, this is a supervised children issue, right? And so since we are the place where children go, we need to make sure that when they're not in our buildings, that they have safe places to go. But on the proposal that's been presented to us, on the examples, I just want to say this example of Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday troubles me, because then the children are not in school. They're away from their face-to-face teacher for 5 days in a row, right? So in my world, it might be Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday, or some such thing. I'm just throwing that out there. I know nothing is written in stone. And the last thing I want to say is I'm unaware of any surgeons who have passed out from wearing their mask in surgery. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson, real quick before the next board member speaks, the communications team just said that the survey can also be taken by telephone. So we can use our telephone banks and get that to all families as well. So Claudia just sent that to me.
All right, so
yeah, Dr. Robinson, just a quick note. Sorry, Mr. Barbieri. That was very early. That PowerPoint presentation was early. We have looked at some of the other districts, what they're doing, and possibly that blended model, even though it's hybrid and blended, will definitely probably be different than what you saw on the screen.
all right, Mrs. Andrews, then Mrs. Whitfield, and Ms. Burrow.
Thank you, and Mr. Clausen, that was one of the things I had on my list. And I think that Dr. Panoa and your team is actually looking at those 76 big urban districts across the state, and you are finding information they're already doing. Some of them have already done their surveys, and their surveys have come back. And we should be looking at those surveys and getting some feedback on what we're doing and how well we're doing as we start our process. But I just wanted to say, I haven't seen a copy of the surveys that have been sent out now. I would like to, as a board member, see a copy of the survey, if I'm not the only one asking about this. Have you all seen it? I mean, it didn't come to me as a board member. Certainly, I want to see the results and discuss the results, but I've not seen the copies of the surveys that have gone out to people. Can you help me with that?
Yes, we can make sure that we have that sent out.
Okay, and definitely the results. As well as, we have a lot of education advisory groups across Palm Beach County. I work on many of them, and many of them are having their own Zoom calls monthly. Wellington, Royal Palm Beach, the Glades region has this. And so, when we're talking about the town halls, we can very well tie into that. Dr. Fanoa has met with the mayors. They do have the websites, and they always carry our information if we request it. So I would assume that you've been making those contacts with those cities and those education advisory boards across the county, and those other groups that actually have a real interest of what's going on with our children within our neighborhoods. And they may not be called an education advisory group. They may be called something else, but we need to reach out to them and have them play an integral part of what we're trying to do. And just, if you're doing that, Mr. Clausen, I just want to make sure that you can actually put that on your list.
Ms. Andrews, I'll answer for him. And I don't know all the details of the work group. If those things have not been considered, we will put them on the list. Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Whitfield and then Ms. Brill.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Clausen, for that presentation. 2 questions. One, are you guys including in your research what's happened in the other countries that have already reopened? I know Italy and South Korea have reopened their schools before the end of the year, so there might be some lessons to be learned there from what was effective.
We will definitely look at that. I have not seen any of the research. We've been getting a lot of information back from the large districts in the state and in our country. I know that there was a group from our district that met with Broward County today to share ideas. So I will definitely put some emphasis on let's doing research on schools that have opened up in other countries already and look and see what happened and how that's working.
And then, thank you. And I was also interested in all of the parents that called in and spoke about the mask situation. If we, my understanding is that we're going to follow CDC guidelines. If CDC guidelines say that we have to wear masks, will we be mandating that, or do we even have the ability to mandate somebody wearing a mask? I kind of imagine there's some level of personal responsibility and freedom that goes into that. Has that been considered?
We have, there was a question on a survey that was about mask, and I don't know if I think we may have taken that question out. And for the reopening task force, we're just looking at potential options that we take to executive cabinet and then to the superintendent for them to make decisions on. And obviously, I think legal would have to have a part in that. I'm sorry. I think legal would have to give us input on that as well. We have not made any decisions, or we have not made any in our plans whether students would be wearing masks or not at this time, as we try to put these plans together and bring them forth to executive cabinet and to the superintendent.
Yeah, Ms. Whitfield, what I can share with the board, I know you're aware, we placed the order for 1 million masks, and they're currently in the warehouse. So our initial purchase was to get in line because everybody was buying them, and it was just a thing to do. So we have enough masks to cover all of our employees in the district for the year. So it's really a debate. I mean, in our health advisory committee, the epidemiologists, public health officials, the pediatricians. So that's going to be part of that conversation. I think the point that I want you to hear that Larry said earlier is that we will follow the CDC guidelines to the best of our ability. When you read the CDC guidelines, we technically wouldn't be able to have school the way it's currently written. So, I just want to be clear about that. And I think that's why I definitely appreciate the board pushing us to get the public feedback, because I think this is I don't think there's an easy answer. I think as Andrew said clearly, are we looking at other districts? Hillsborough survey just came back. Everything is pretty much 50-50 from parents. It's either here or here. And so the short answer, we haven't made that decision yet. And so we'll see. But I think our summer camp, opening up summer camps, opening up church leases at some point soon will help us understand what's even possible. So that's why our timelines are kind of tight, and we'll bring you that data for final decision making.
General Counsel, you want to chime in here?
Thank you. I just wanted to ensure the board that those are the kinds of questions that Mrs. Whitfield raised in terms of our authority, legal authority to require masks for employees as well as students, as well as members of the public. I mean, all of that is on our list, our task list to research and to provide as we continue to provide support for the task force in the various components of the work. So we'll be making sure that those issues are well researched and answered for you as this work moves forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Rico. Ms. Brill, then Mrs. Andrews, then Mrs. McQuinn.
Thank you, Mr. Barbieri. And I didn't really plan on going into comments about the blended learning instructional options, but as Dr. Robinson made some comments, I felt I really want to say a few things. I think we all know that there are certain groups that will really not be able to learn if we don't go back with full time in school. Certain areas where the parents are just not going to be able to manage that, where you have two working parents. I was a single mom. I just don't see how that would be possible. Something I've been reading about online, which I'll throw out there also, some school districts are looking into year-round schools with different times for breaks. I don't know if that's something we want to explore. But when we talk about hybrid, I also see a hybrid model where we do open schools, but that we also have that virtual track, because there are going to be some parents that will not send their children back no matter what. And we're going to have some teachers that are going to be afraid to be in the classroom. But I'm glad we're digging into this now. I think that if there's any way possible, we need to open up full-time as much as possible, because the mental health of our children, their families, the workforce is going back. And I just, I keep hearing from everybody that their children have fallen behind. And I'm really worried about what's going to happen when the children come back. Talking to children whose families have had them online the whole time they were out, and they're telling me that their children are going to be behind when school starts. So I would just want to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brill. Mrs. Andrews, then Mrs. McQuinn, then Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. I have two questions. I don't know if we've surveyed our employees, i.e. our teachers and even our maintenance people or bus drivers that have children within our school district, because as we talk about all of these options, many of them, both of them may work for the school district, and they could be at risk as to whether they can actually care for their children if we're on some of this hybrid piece that we're talking about. So I don't know if we've ever spoken to the folks that work for us in whatever capacity as to how would they be impacted by some of these models that we're talking about. And secondly, I just know our teachers are really concerned, especially those teachers that are over 60, and they don't want to be penalized. So we've got to take care of them, as well as some of the parents that may not agree with any of these ideas that we're going to come up with. And finally, whatever our final idea will be, I don't want them to be penalized. I want us to make sure that we have something so that no child will be left behind. And when their parents are saying that they can't come back or whatever the issue is because we didn't do this, I don't want there to be any negative consequences when it gets down to the rubber meeting the road. So Mr. Clausen, the teachers that are in the at-risk group, hopefully we're working with the union on that, as well as parents in the end that will really need some support and attention if they can't agree with anything that we've done. I just don't want people to be penalized. So could you give me some comments on that?
Well, I will tell you that to answer your first question, the survey of our staff, I know that in the operational side, I've talked to many of the people in our department. They had some concerns regarding that specific thing. But when we're talking about serving parents, I think we need to survey all parents and not just our district parents that work for our district. So I think we're going to get information twice from them. We're going to get it from them as a parent, and then we're going to get it from them as employees when we send out the district employee survey next week. So hopefully, I have not seen that survey. Hopefully that there'll be information in there that will help us as we continue to try to make some of these decisions. And I agree 100% regarding teachers that are not going to want to be coming back to work because they may be at a high risk for health. I know my former school, I had several teachers that I would not want them to come back and put themselves in danger after working, so many years, and they only have 6 months or 8 months to go until they retire. And, they're health-wise, they're just not capable of being in that type of environment right now. So I think when we look at the survey and we get the information back where certain parents do not want their students to come back to school because of health reasons or risk reasons, and then we have teachers that are the same way, we're able to match that up so that those parents that want their kids to be at home and those teachers that want to be at home, we're able to actually link those up so that we're meeting the needs of both our students and our teachers.
Thank you, Mr. McQuinn and Mr. Shaw.
Okay, I took good notes. First of all, I like Mr. Clausen's comment about being able to accommodate a teacher and specific students with distance learning. I don't think we'll have a problem figuring out if a parent wants their children to have total distance learning, probably that can happen. The other scenarios are the hardest to work out. And going back to Mrs. Brill's comments about some form of blended, I think unless a parent wants an elementary student to stay home, we have to let our elementary age students come back. They can't supervise themselves. So I don't know what that looks like. Do we utilize other facilities to provide more room? Those are thoughts to look at too. And also, and these are just suggestions, but I've been anxious to share them for a while. In terms of our low performing students, I think they need to be greatly encouraged as one of our priorities to be able to have the bricks and mortar face-to-face instruction. And also I'm hoping that teachers that are selected for that, and I thank Dr. Sheffield for answering a question that I had asked her as the teachers selected to do this summer, I can't remember what it is, but working with our kids this summer, that they were selected for their ability to make connections with students. And I know that a couple of principals have told me the same thing, and that's so important. So I really want to thank the district for that. I'm almost through. I like that thought about the year-round schools. And one more question. Have we thought about surveying our rising seniors?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Have we thought about surveying our rising seniors?
We have not, but we could possibly do that. That's a good point. I would tell you, just briefly, we meet constantly, and today we met this morning with the operational program manager as well as the academic one. And some of the things that you were talking about, Ms. Brill was talking about, and I know that Dr. Robinson is going to, what are we doing for our students with special needs and their low level 1 kids and low level 2 kids? And we're trying to figure out how do we make that work even within a blended model. We know some of our most challenging ESE students will need full-time services, as well as some of our EOL non-English speakers will, but also we have to focus on our kids that are behind academically, 1, 2, 3 years behind reading. We also have to take into consideration how are we meeting their needs if we have to go to a blended model. And just a quick note, there's some schools, unfortunately, that if you talk about bringing back their just not their low 25%, just their level 1s, you would have so many students in school that I don't know that you could use a blended model. So I think what we're going to have to look at also is one size doesn't fit all here. There may be some schools that can bring back their whole school. You know, if you look at like a Royal Palm School or an Indian Ridge School, those schools can function. They have small classes, they have small groups. Some of our elementary schools are pretty small. They may be able to bring back all their students. So it's not a one size fits all. And as we continue to look at the options that we're going to be presenting to Executive Cabinet and to the superintendent, those are all options that we need to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. One is related to the survey. I believe it was last week, the board was sent a copy of the parent survey. Are there other surveys that are out there besides the one that was sent to us?
Sorry. No, it was just the one that was sent to the parents. So you did receive that, Ms. Andrews, you did not receive that? Okay, we'll try to follow up to make sure that everyone gets that.
All right. My questions are going to be kind of what if situations. The first one is that we're coming to a point where in our high schools, some of the fall sports would normally be looking at doing their summer practices and stuff. What decisions, if any, have been made related to that?
I know that Valerie Mirares, our county athletic director, gave a presentation to Executive Cabinet last week. I was not there during that, but I did get an opportunity to look at it. Dr. Fenoy or one of his staff members probably could answer that question better than I can because I wasn't there for that presentation, Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, if Dr. Sheffield is on, she might be able to give you a high level, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, Mr. Shaw, we met with Valerie and her team on last week, and we do have right now we are looking in phase 1 to where we will start with our fall sports. And part of that with student participation and so forth, what we're looking at is that on May 26th through June 25th, that was considered to be a phase 1. Where the coaches will have an opportunity to start with some virtual meetings, preparation, and going through the paperwork and so forth for the students and their families. And then we would move into phase 2, June 29th through to July 9th. And that's where the outdoor conditioning and so forth will take place. And then phase 3 will be July 13th through the 23rd. And that's where the coaches would have an opportunity and that's where they would be introduced to the gym and the weight room activities. And then phase 4, July 27th through August 8th. And that's the official start for the Florida High School Athletic Association fall season. And then the phase 5 is week of August 10th. And the reason that this was all done in phases, it was that we realized that our students had been out since March 13th. And of course, their safety and getting them back in and making sure that they're healthy is, of course, our first priority. So right now, Valerie and Yetta and the team have been working very closely with the coaches and the athletic directors and just getting them ready and working through phases 1 through 5. So that's where we are. And I will actually share the entire phase of the project with the board office, and it will give you more of a clear picture as it pertains to introducing our students back into the fall sports.
All right, any board member have any
Mr. Shaw, your microphone is off, Mr. Shaw.
I don't think I really need an answer to this, but this is just something that I think we need to consider. And that was that on one of the slides, it indicated the start of school and the decision being made. I think it was July 15th about opening school. With some of this being dependent on what the governor's direction is and any restrictions that may be there, and some of the implications of if there's a resurgence in the virus, all of those kind of things we don't know. I'm concerned about what kind of plan have you been working on
that if we need to pull the trigger earlier on the board having a discussion about the start date of school or any changes related to that, have you got a plan in place for us to make decisions earlier than July 15th? Or if something happens shortly after July 15th, what's the plan there as it relates? Because I really think that could be one of those unknown surprises that hit us during the course of the next month or two.
Yeah, Mr. Shaw, so the calendar is definitely something the board will, right now our focus is August 10th. So all of our efforts is getting ready for the 10th. The reason why we set that July date for a final decision by the board is because of the realities, and we know something's going to come out from the state in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So it's just one of those things. So for the public to understand, we're shooting for August 10th. If we get some word that something changes, then we'll shift that. But I think my argument is that since the calendar is essentially, I have to make a recommendation to the board. This is a board decision. I want to at least drop dead date by July 15th, have that decision made. So over the next, I think we'll just make it a discussion item at our next in the next meeting or two. We need to probably spend some time with that. And I think we'll also, because of your comments, we'll definitely probably get some feedback, and I would probably ask board members to do their own, conversations with their constituents. But right now, August 10th is the date. And so, but if something needs to change, we'll make that. I would like for the board to make that decision by early July, so we can give people time to make the adjustments if we change it.
Okay, thank you. And just one other comment for everybody. The Florida School Boards Association has a board of directors meeting that starts at 3:30. So I'm going to be trying to do 2 meetings at one time. So if I look like I'm in space, I probably am for the next time. So if I'm talking to the board and then I'm talking to someone else, it's just because that's life at this point in time. So thanks.
Dr. Robinson.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to frame this a little bit, at least from my point of view. So I truly appreciate the impact all this has had on parents, right? But first and foremost, this is a public health issue. And so the reason I want to point that out is, in my opinion, every voice does not have equal weight, right? So the voice that I think will carry the most weight, and I think the voice that we need to be clear that we hear, the voices of people who are trained in public health and epidemiology, the people who understand disease transmission and how to decrease the risk of disease transmission, because that is what this is all about, right? First and foremost, right? I just want to add that I've heard multiple times in different places and spaces and email about this COVID-19 not so impacting children. Well, yeah, it is true that the older you are, the more your risk of dying from it if you get infected. But there's so many unknowns, right? So they keep talking about between 25 and 50% of people who are infected are asymptomatic. The theory is that if you are asymptomatic, you have less viral load and are less contagious. That doesn't mean it's zero. So we should not be confused by that. But this is the other thing. We live in a community. And even if these children do not get this newly identified syndrome called multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, right? Even if they don't get that from COVID-19, even if all they have is some sniffles, they can take that home and kill their grandparent. So please let us not look at this in isolation, because we are in a community, right? Now, secondly, in my opinion, this is an education issue. Yes, we had children who were already left behind. Superimposed on that is the COVID-19 slide. Now being superimposed on that is summer slide, right? So we're going to be in desperate shape whenever school reopens. And so we need to plan accordingly. I appreciate Mr. Clausen preempting me because he knew where I was going to go, because I go that way so many times. But let's just be clear that we have to outline our solutions based one on public health and two based on education. And after having rambled on about all that, I want us to look at how, if we're in a blended model, we could have extended school days inside of the bricks and mortar, right? So that we can maximize the opportunity for direct instruction and learning. And then the other piece is that to make note that we're going to have to be nimble. We're going to have to outline all our lessons learned, because it is entirely possible that if we reopen school, if we look like we got the all clear by whoever's definition, I can almost promise you the political definition is not the same as the public health definition of all clear. But if we reopen school, it's very likely that we'll end up having to shift from regular school to blended model, right? And we might even have to go all the way back to distance learning again. So we have to prepare to be nimble. So I hope we're outlining that as we are outlining these plans. So thank you. I'm done.
So I have a question, then Mrs. Whitfield and Mrs. Andrews. Mr. Clausen, it's obviously very feasible that if we do get everything restarted, to follow Dr. Robinson, have you guys considered what would happen if we have an infection in one classroom in one of our schools? Is the thought that we would close down the entire school? Is it, how would we handle that? Because it's going to happen. It's only a matter of time once the kids are back in the classroom that somebody is going to show up with it, whether it's a teacher or a staff member. So have you given some consideration to how that would be handled?
Yes, we have given it consideration. And as we continue to work through where we're at in the process, obviously the Environmental Control Risk Management, as well as the Health Advisory Committee, we need more input from them on what that's going to look like so that we can make good, sound decisions as we bring them forward to Executive Cabinet and to the Superintendent for your final approval. But yes, that has come up, and we need to get more information and do more research in that area before we can make any type of final decisions. Or I should say, we don't make decisions as we put our plan forward for the decision makers.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Whitfield and Mrs. Andrews.
I was just thinking the implications of some of the hybrid models, as Dr. Robinson was talking, for the budget. And so I was hoping that when we discuss the budget later, that we can talk a little bit about if we end up having to have, the thought is just baffling to me, if we end up having to have an entire day of classes and teachers that stretch from morning until night, how would we deal with that financially? I can't even get my head around it. So anyway, as we talk, maybe Mr. Burke can address if he's put any thought into that.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield. Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. And I just know the union will be a piece of this discussion. Hopefully we have them at the table. But as Ms. Whitfield was saying, many of our buildings are closed down, from maybe 4 to 6 in the afternoon. And our buildings are empty sometimes on Saturday. And we're in some communities, when we're talking about all these children that are getting left behind or summer slide, we have to kind of figure out how we can use our buildings more effectively at times that are different from our normal way we've done business before. We have to get to the new normal now and look at how we can use our buildings in a different way. Have we thought about that, Mr. Clausen?
We have, some of the things that have been discussed is, and again, we're still in discussion phases, is potentially, if maybe the K through 5 or K through 8 are back full time, high school maybe potentially could be on a distance learning or blended learning or something along that line. But again, those are all in the infant stages of discussion. And, we still haven't had the opportunity to really flush that all out yet before we can bring any of that forward to the Executive Cabinet, to the Superintendent.
All right.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Mr.
The thing of this is we have a lot of work and we have a very quick turnaround time. And, we try to make the best decisions and try to bring forth the best information to help guide decisions as they move forward. But again, we're walking that tightrope of this timeline as we get ready to bring our kids back. So we need to make sure we're making the best decisions, not the fastest decisions. So that's why some of the questions that you have asked, yes, we have been having dialogue on them, but we have not been we're not in a situation now where we can make any final type of suggestions to the superintendent and to executive cabinet.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clausen. Any other board members have any further questions on this? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Clausen, for all of your help with this. Mr. Superintendent, before we start the next budget workshop, we have one speaker. Are you ready for that workshop?
Yes, sir, I'm ready for the workshop. I wasn't aware of another speaker.
All right, so Mr. Ramasar, if you would please, Jacqueline Calloway apparently called in. If you'd play that for us, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Barbieri, fellow school board members, and Superintendent Fenoy. My name is Jacqueline Calloway, and I'm Vice Chairperson of the Coalition for Black Student Achievement. I would like to express the concern that the Coalition has regarding the proposed staff restructuring and its impact on the budget. It is not clear to us how these proposed staff changes would actually result in a budgetary savings for the district. Specifically, it is our understanding that this proposed personnel restructuring plan will no longer include the position of Deputy Superintendent and Chief of Schools, which is currently held by Mr. Keith Oswald. The superintendent staff restructuring puts in place 2 additional positions, Chief of School Support and Supervision and Chief of Student Services. In this reorganization, Mr. Oswald would be reassigned to another position, which seems to be a demotion, even though there would not be a change in salary for him. The Coalition respectfully questions how this is a budgetary savings and is asking that a clear explanation be done of why this change is taking place. On your website, the main purpose of the Deputy Superintendent is in part to ensure that quality academic programs and initiatives are offered to all students as part of the mission to increase student academic achievement. We believe strongly that Mr. Oswald has demonstrated his ability to do this, and in particular with Black students. We ask that you re-examine the staff restructuring proposal and its ultimate budgetary impact, as well as its impact on academic achievement for Black students. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, if you want to get started.
Yes.